Shalom, this is Jay Shear sharing what I know about the Bible, and today we're going to be talking about how we know we are the Israelites outside the Bible. And this is supposed to be for a short version. There's a lot of long videos that's out there that shows a lot of great information, but I know that there's not a lot of people who will look at those information until they get prompted to do so. So I made this based upon some of the stuff that I've studied or even received from other people. And hopefully this will help you get a better understanding if you don't know anything about this subject, or you want to find out more information outside the Bible. I just went going through this real quick to show you, to give you an interest to look more about who we are as Israel, whether you're African American or someone connected to Israel in Africa and Caribbeans in the UK, that come from the African diaspora. We know that you're Israel. All right. So one thing, at least in America, we have an issue because they call us African American, and one big issue with that is that it's two continents. Africa is a continent, and America is a continent. And as we know, in America, there's many different nations, as we know about Canada, in United States, Mexico, and a lot of the South American places, as well as Haiti and other places as well. So in Africa, there's many countries, or even more tribes, even within the continent of Africa. So as you see here, there's a lot of different people who basically are faces of Africa, but they know what tribe they come from, versus a lot of us in the diaspora, especially in America. We don't really know where we come from, so they give us the name of two continents. Another name they give us is black. So what definitely is truly is black? Is it just the black of the skin, or do they just use that word towards certain people? Because here in America, our skin may be black, but what about in other places? So here we see people from Papua New Guinea, here with the blonde hair, the kids from Solomon Islands, the Fiji people on the right there, and at the bottom, the Australian Aborigines. In India, the Cochin Indians, they're black. Or in Arabia, what are these people called? Are they still considered black, even though they're in Asia and in the Middle East, or in India? Are they considered black, or are they considered their nationality? And most of the time they'll tell you they're their nationality. So black is just a color of skin. So we actually know, even in the Middle East, there's Afro-Iranians. Some of them, they try to say, were brought over there as slaves, probably during the Arab slave trade. And then some of them say that they're natural born, they're native born there to the land. And as we see here, we see the Elamites from the Persian Empire, and they painted themselves this way on their palace here in Persia, the palace of Susa. So this is how they painted themselves in the Middle East. And as you see, between Iraq and Iran, you see where Susa was, right there at the top right. And so when we read in the Bible about Queen Esther and other people, this Daniel Lion's Den, this is that kingdom that basically said that they were the ones in power. So very important to understand that those people were black skin. And they were native to the land, for they are the ones that actually were the original people who built up the land from ancient times. So also we see here that when we talk about Jew, what is a Jew? Is a Jew is just the ones that we used to see in, the Ashkenazis, or are there different types of Jews? And many people don't know, outside of the Ashkenazis, there are different types of Jews. As we see here, starting there from your left, the man with the hat, that's a black Jew. That's what they call usually. There's a lot of them here in America. Next to him, that's a Sephardic Jew, like they're from Spain, Hispanic they call them. Right? That might be either, I can't really tell, maybe Ashkenazi or Mizraim Jew. Maybe he's Sephardic. Mizraim ones are the ones that are from Middle East. And then there at the right, we see an Ethiopian Jew, or what they call Beta Israel, or a Falasha Jew. And they actually are from Ethiopia. So, these are people who actually are confirmed to be counted as Jews. And even in America, a lot of people don't know that the cousin of Michelle Obama is his black chief rabbi. and he's basically the head of the worldwide community of Black Jews. Now, Black Jews, are different than Hebrew Israelites or Messianic or however you want to call it. Israelite is actually an ethnicity. A lot of people tell you that it's a cult or something, but that's the Black Hebrew Israelites, and they're called camps. That's different from an ethnicity standpoint versus a religion. But even the Black Hebrew Israelites, you have to truly understand what their philosophy is, because a lot of people talk about how they hate white people, but they don't talk about how they hate Africans. So you really need to look into what they believe and where they're getting their beliefs from before you find out they're not the only group that believes in that. But nevertheless, this just shows you that, here he is meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, and you see him there with the Obamas. So he's actually a respected person in the community. And also, you see the artifacts. These are ancient Israelites in the captivity. You see the Syrian release, where they're actually seeing there at the top left, kind of brought out in captivity. You can see their beards and their kind of woolly hair. But definitely on the right, you can see where they're actually called the Lachish relief, where they actually were taken during the time of the Assyrians, taking them out, and that's actually out of the Bible. But this artifact is actually in the British Museum, and there you can see their woolly hair and their beards. Down at the bottom, you can also see them there, and that's actually them playing music. And you can tell they have like cornrows. So the very African features there, what we'll call African, but they're also considered to be Israelites. Then also, when we actually look at some more artifacts, we see there on the left, it talks about a terracotta head of Semite marked Hebrew. So basically, they consider that Hebrew, and that's from Memphis, from Egypt. And they can label that during the 332 BCs to 395 AD, and that's the Greco-Roman period, during the time that Yahushua lived, the Messiah. So that's how they said the Hebrews look. So, and actually that is in the museum in London of Egyptian archaeology. So on the right, we see a Semitic slave. So we know that the Messiah and the Israelites came through Shem, who was Semitic. And this is from ancient Egyptian, and actually shows his hands tied behind his back there. And that is actually in the museum in Israel. So they actually know that this is what the depiction of a Semitic slave looks like. And then even in Israel, we see the mosaic floor of the 6th century, so 6th century AD, after the Messiah. Close to 500 years after the Messiah. They still were painting the synagogue floors there in Israel. They drew Abraham, who was a Semitic, who's Shemitic, and that's the father of all the Israelites and Hebrew people. Well, most of the Hebrew people as well. They drew him as black, and you can see the discoloration down, as you kind of look him holding the knife there, and then you hold his son, you can see the dark brown was the original color of the painting. And even in Israel itself, you can see Miss Israel in 2013 was black. So she was an Ethiopian Jew, Beta Israel Flash, as I was discussing before. And on the right, you see where she actually met with President Obama there. And then at the bottom, during that same time, around that same time, they even were questioning, do Black Lives Matter in Israel? Because they had a lot of police battering and things, and they basically rioted and things of that nature. And that some people think that's what basically caused the Black Miss Israel 2013. But even here recently, this year, in 2020, there was a police shooting, and you see that they basically started more about the Black Lives Matter and the concern of the Black Ethiopian Jews in Israel. So we also see down on the left that there's Ethiopian Jews from Queen Sheba. So, that's Halle Berry played in the movie about Queen Sheba. And down at the bottom, we see there was a book talking about the hidden and untold history of the Jewish people and Ethiopians. And there's actually two different groups, at least, of Ethiopian, what they call Jews. Jews is actually a more modern term, but Judeans was the that's the proper term, based upon the of Judah, of Judah. So that's the reason why they have in the Bible they had Queen Sheba going to meet Solomon, and there was a group of people called the Amharic people, and there might be some other ones as well that actually talk about their descent from Queen Sheba and King Solomon, and that's where Haile Selassie eventually comes out of in his association back to that family, and was the last ruling king or last ruler from that line. And then we see there in the middle, we see the other Ethiopian Jews, which are the Phalasha of Beta Israel, and they are least associated with the tribe of Dan. But you see there was an Operation Solomon and how they actually pulled them out of Ethiopia or Sudan and brought them back to Israel. And then that was around in the 1990s, I think I see there. And then there was a previous one, I think Operation Solomon was the second one, and the first one to the right was the Operation Moses. And once again, you see the untold story of the secret exodus for Phalasha Jews from Ethiopia. It's always untold or secret, so it shows you they're trying to hide something, and it's basically it was starting to be uncovered even back then. And you see that all the people in the plains there, but a lot of people don't know that the U.S. actually helped them. It helped the Israelis to take these people from that African region to Israel, right? So that shows you that U.S. has knowledge of there being these black, what we call Jews today, living, or black Israelites. Let me start using words Israelites, living in Africa, right? So actually, there was also a book written called The Lost Tribes, A Myth, Suggestions Towards Rewriting Hebrew History by Alan H. Godby, Dr. Alan H. Godby at that. And he was a professor of Old Testament at Duke University, here where I'm from in North Carolina. And this was back down in the 1930s. And as you see, the book, you can get the book for about $1,500 if you have that. And so, usually when you see books that much, there's some important information in there that people want to have or to hide, one or the other. And then he actually has in the book a map that he actually outlines a lot of the Israelite tribes, or you can see where he put, especially there down by Gabon, you can see some of the fuzzy writing that says Jews in Africa. So he depicts a lot of the places where the Israelites went throughout Africa. And there's also a International Society for the Study of African Jewry, ISSAJ, and it talks about how they're a community of scholars and students engaged in study of African Jewry and its diverse cultures, historical environments, religious beliefs, and practices. And you can actually go to their site and you can get more information about how people from all around the world, all backgrounds, come together and talk about the African Jewry of people. And you can see where they mapped out some of the tribes that they are aware of, especially there on the East Coast, and you can kind of see how they are depicted there. And it's very interesting because you see their map there on the right that I have overlaid with my own DNA. So on the left, you see my DNA, and I basically put green on the map on the right to show you where the overlap is. And you can see there's a lot of overlap between my DNA as what they call an African American, that overlaps those same regions where a lot of the African Israelites live. So Cambridge University Press also talks a little bit. It says Dr. Alan H. Godby reached the following conclusions. These factors have a very specific significance if we consider the presence of Judaism among the American Negroes. So talking about African Americans, or American Negroes as they call us here. Hundreds of thousands of slaves were transported to America from West Africa during the trade, which started some 400 years ago. What traces of Judaism still remain among the Negroes of West Africa at that period? So it talks about, these West African tribes that has a connection with Judaism. And it says, to the extent that they were persecuted, they were more likely than other Negroes to be seized during wars and sold as slaves. So when people say these tribes were selling these tribes, they actually targeted the Negro ones, especially the ones who they knew had traces of Judaism. It is virtually certain that many part Jewish Negroes were among those sent as slaves. And it says to, I would guess, assume it will say to America there. So we can see that a lot of these things right here, this overlap, shows that there was African Israelites there in the West Coast, and how that matches with the stories of places like Cambridge University. And if you know that we're Negroes, you know that you might be amazed at knowing that there's a place called Negro Land. And this is a place where Negroes come from, right? Negro land would be the land of Negroes. And you look right there in the middle, see where I circle a certain region, and I brought it a little closer up on the right there at the bottom. And you can see where it says Kingdom of Judah, or Wuda, within the Slave Coast. And little thing I got off of Wikipedia about Negro land, or Negrita. It says, is an archaic term in European mapping describing the inland and by Westerns poorly explored region in West Africa as an area populated with Negro people. This area comprised at least the western part of the region called Sudan, not to be confused with the modern country. So saying that there's a country Sudan now, it's not the same as this area called Negro land. The term is probably a direct translation of the Arabic term Bildad el-Sudan, meaning land of the blacks, corresponding to about the same area. There were various kinds of people in the area, including the Jews of Bildad el-Sudan. Some of the greatest states of these considered part of Negroland were the Bornu Empire and the Sokoto Caliphate. So, you see there, they're called the Jews of Bildad. El-Sudan was also called Negro land as well, and it was associated with Nicarata. But also in that slave coast, you see Wuda. That's some other names. And if you actually look at certain books, this is a book there. It says The Earth and Its Inhabitants, West Africa by Lisi Recluse. This is one of the articles I got from Benaya, Israel. Very good to look at his information. But it says, talks about their east of Great Popo begins the Dahomey tribe, Dahomey territory. Dahomey basically is sitting there on the slave coast in what we call today Benin and maybe Togo, guarded by the important town of I can't really see that, Gulal, known to Europeans by various names, Fida, Hevida, I don't know if that's an RB, Hereda, Wuda, Wida. The old writers called it Judah, and its inhabitants were said to be Jews. So it's right there, it talks about how Wuda or Wida was also called Judah, and its inhabitants were said to be Jews. Saying that right there in Africa, in that place where we just saw, they called Kingdom of Judah, Wuda, they were actually Jews living there. Alright. So French Negroland, or Negrita map, you see in 1766 for the Duke of Orleans map. And you see that little area right there blown up. You can see Lamnam. According to Esrices, the land hereabout was populated by Jews, showing you that same area we were talking about was also Negro land. Another name was Negritia, I think that's how you say it. Was also called Negro land, but it also had Jews living there, as we said before. And then on the left, you see Jews of the Bildad el-Sudan. You see the same area around the Songhai Empire, the Mali Empire. There were people called the Jews, and that's the Arabic name, I believe, that was given. So you see there the black people there holding a sign, and in that area you see where it says wandering tribes, Jews, exile there. So, and then in the book of Hebrewism of West Africa by Joseph J. Philip Williams in 1931, you see where he basically has a map showing how they come from Jerusalem and migrated to West Africa. And you see that there's the Yoruba and the and the Ashanti tribes there mentioned there. Ashanti is in, they're mostly in Ghana, and Yoruba is really in Nigeria, but it looks like they have them in Benin there. So they must have been a bigger tribe, because we know the current territories of the countries were based upon colonization. So when you hear a lot of the country names now and you see the territories on the map, it's not the same that the Africans basically had it mapped out, but where the Europeans split out the land based upon their different countries. And if you look up the Berlin Conference, you can see how the Europeans decided to split out Africa and to give it to each one of their nations to go and exploit the land. So then we see the Jews of Kenya here. It's just showing to some of the Jewish guys. This is a hip hop or artist that actually was given the position by the tribe to be one of the, I guess you call them priests, and the keepers of a Torah scroll, supposed to be one of the oldest ones. So you see him there. And these are the Jews of Kenya. You see the Jews of Uganda. There's Jews there. Jews of South Africa, or the Israelites. And you see that even PBS, UNC TV, actually wrote about the tribe there. And you see BBC also talked about them. And that's a book talking about the Limb of the Lost Tribe of Israel in South Africa. And they were actually DNA tested by Duke University and known to be more of the Korite gene than even the people of the Israelis that's living in Israel now. And the Korite gene is basically the priestly gene, showing that they descend from either Aaron or Moses to that lead those Levites there. So Ghana, what we talked about, you can see even the Ashanti tribe. The word Ashanti means the descendants of Ashan, and Ashan is actually a name in the Bible. And you can actually see here a picture of the Ashanti priest that was actually helping the missionaries. So showing that he actually had this breastplate on before the missionaries got there. And it's the breastplate also listed within the Bible. So it's very important. In Nigeria, you have the Igbo Jews, or Igbos, or Igbos, so they have a lot of different type of names. And you see a lot of books and stuff around who they are, and that's very important, because Henry Kissinger, who was the Holocaust survivor that came to America, he ended up becoming the Secretary of State for Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford. And then he basically wrote a memorandum to the White House about his about U.S. involvement in what they called the Biafra Wars, where Nigeria, different tribes in Nigeria was fighting one another, and one of the ones they were really going against was the Igbos. And you can see here that he actually put in this article 1969, around between 1969 to 72. You see that here says the Igbos are the wandering Jews of West Africa. So here is a Jewish man talking about the Israelites, Jews, were actually also, was in West Africa. So if we know that, then we know the Igbos are important, because we see there in the top right, we see that in Williamsburg that they actually had Igbo Negro slaves. So that shows you that there was some that was a runaway, and this man's trying to get his slave back. But also in Virginia, on the left in Farmville, Virginia, we see a place called Free Blacks of Israel Hill. And then this is a U.S. marker, so it's a federal marker. So it's claim showing you that it's legit. But it talks about these Israelites and other free African Americans, works as farmers, crafts people, etc. And then you see at the end it says Israel Hill remained a vigorous black community into the 20th century. And this man right here, I think he's from William and Mary's, or at least somehow associated with them. He wrote a book about Israel, and they actually were slaves that were set free. And when they were set free, they were actually had a one of the better diverse communities, and they actually were suing people, white people, even before slavery was abolished. So it's a very interesting story they have. And then down on the right there with the picture of the man, that's Demas Taylor, and he actually found a town here in North Carolina called Taylortown, and he was known to be Igbo tribe, which also could be Igbo, so showing that their presence was even here in North Carolina. And then you see my DNA there on the left as being 22% Nigerian, and a good majority of that actually comes out of place using my 23andMe DNA, Anambra. And Anambra in Nigeria is a Biafra region, as we were talking about the Biafra War, and 98% of the population there are Igbo. So showing you that even me and most of you coming out of Virginia especially probably have our Igbo descendants that are known to be the Israelites. So there's also a message from the Igbos to African Americans, and I shortened the message because it's actually a little longer than it is. But he said, "We are Igbos in our gallery village of Omoveri tribe. We are waiting a long time for the arrival of the Israelites." So he acknowledges the Israelites and waiting for them to return, and he's talking to us. And he said, "We, the Igbos, have been waiting for you and have connections with you for ages." So showing you that they know who we are, but we don't know who we are. Now, not all Igbos know, but some of them actually do. And my question is, are all the Igbos the same people, or there's a mixing of people after the migration that came later? Not sure. And looking at the map, you can basically see all these people from diaspora, from the different slave trades they had. You can see how they were spread throughout all four corners of the world, all around the world. And from the west to the east to the north, even there a little to the south. You can see even Australia and other places. And you can see how they were spread throughout, and all these people are connected through bloodline. So it's very interesting to see, because if you know anything about the Bible, it says that they will be placed, the Israelites will be in the four corners of the earth, or north, south, east, west, and they will all be gathered back together again. So only people after 70 AD, when the Messiah says that you'll be captive from all nations, shows you that any group, this is the only group I'm aware of after 70 AD, that actually was taken out throughout all the nations into slavery. And this is my other DNA, and it actually shows you there on the left with the arrows that I'm connected to the Limba, the Bantu, which would be the southern migrations of these tribes that came out of the west. The Yoruba, we saw that on the map. The Mandinka, that's kind of in that area I was talking about, the Songhai Empire, Mali. And then you see the Moroccan there, that's like North Africa. The Jew-Ethiopian, which I'm thinking that's the breakout between the Amharic and the Danites flashes. But then you say Mozabite, and I think that's Mozambique. And then you see Yemen. So all these places that I have marked here, at least, all have Israelite, or what they call, the black Jewish people living there. Okay? And we also see India, and they have the Kosher Jews there. Then you see in Portugal, you see a Black Lives Matter protest in Lisbon. Lisbon is the capital of Portugal. And you see on the right there, top right, you see a painting from Lisbon. Back in the day, I think that's around the 15 to 1600s. And then at the bottom, you see this book, and it's talking about the Critical Review or Annals of Literature, volume 57. And it reads there in the box, the discovery of the Gold Coast served, now the F's are actually S's, so, older type of English. Coast served indeed yet more to enlarge the sphere of the navigation of the Portuguese than their slave trade, but it was forced them also to extend themselves on the coast to settle colonies in Congo, which is in Africa, Angola, which is in Africa, and other places which they had till then neglected. Prince Henry's colonies were enlarged by his successors. King John II in 1402 expelled all the Jews to the island of St. Thomas, which had been discovered in 1471. So I think that's 1492. My apologies. Has been discovered in 1471 into other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. And from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews in Luango, which is that same Angola Congo area, which are despised even by the very Negroes, are descended, showing that the Negroes of this West Africa area was connected to these people they were calling the banished Jews, the Black Portuguese. And it also reflects the same narrative as we saw earlier, coming from Cambridge University Press, talking about how the Black African, as they were calling them, tribes that actually practiced Judaism were the ones that was truly targeted to be sent to America as slaves. So you can see that in those areas that those were the ones that actually were called the Black Portuguese Jews, coming from Portugal and Lisbon. And then in Forbes, you can see an article, I think this was actually Ron Dalton pointed this out, but it talks about the archaeologists find bodies of enslaved Africans in Portuguese trash dump. So in these ghettos, they end up becoming trash dumps. And as they were going through, they found a whole bunch of bodies that were basically bound and tortured with fractured skulls in Portugal. So it's very interesting because back in the Alan Godby book, he basically has pictures of what he was calling the Luango Coast Negroes. Luango is basically what we're talking about, in that Angola, Congo area. And it talks about, he said, the picture below it says, including Mavumbu Jew. So they knew who these people were during that time, not only in 1931, but wherever he also got this picture from, they identify these people as Black Jews. And he also, just to show some more recent proof, found this place where it talks about this article, Jewish child slaves in Sao Tome, that's St. Thomas, paper, essays, articles, and original documents related to the July 1995 conference. So they had a conference about this in 1995, right? And talks about the author there in New Zealand Jewish Chronicle Publications in 2003, showing you that they had information, the Jewish people has information around this. And the summary says this is a story of some 2,000 Jewish children of young age abducted in 1493, right around the same time, by order of the King of Portugal, forcibly baptized, sent as slaves to the remote uninhabited island of Sao Tome or St. Thomas, recently discovered in the Atlantic Ocean off of the coast of Africa, to become the first settlers. So, sure, this island was not inhabited, and they basically found it, and they threw these children up here. They're probably, and you'll hear more about that, but you can see Sao Tome, Principal, what the people look like now. There in this book, a picture entitled that, and then you also see where these books are being held in the Library of Congress and Princeton University Library and the University of Toronto, Roberts Library, Michigan State University Library, HCL Technical Services and Harvard College Library, and University of California, Los Angeles. Now, one of the things that I found that it's hard to find a lot of these books within the HBCU, the historically black colleges and university. A lot of times they're at public schools or private white institutions. So it's very interesting if this history deals with our past. It seems like there'll be more available at HBCUs, which are not, showing that it's probably a good chance they were hidden once again. But in this book called The Jews and Moors in Spain, that, another reference that Benea has available for people to see. You see this guy named Joseph Korostkov, and he's a rabbi. It talks about he was a prominent American rabbi author, leader of Reformed Judaism, founder of National Farm School, and longtime rabbi at the Reformed Congregation Knesset Israel, the oldest Reformed synagogue in Philadelphia, which under Karaskoth became the largest Reformed congregation in the nation. So this guy is legit. He's a rabbi, American rabbi, and he has some status there. And he was born around 1858 and died around 1923. So close to the same time as the Alan Godberry guy around 1930. So there's a lot of information that must have been going on during that time. And you see there in the book on page 214, it says all Jewish children below 14 years of age were torn from their parents' arms, dragged into the church, baptized. Those under 3 years of age were given to Christians to receive a Christian education, or in other words, to be raised as slaves. So a lot of times you hear the word godmother, godfather, and Benet has some good information about how that was another association of these people that received these children to raise them as slaves. But it says those between 3 and 10 years of age were put on board of a ship conveyed to the newly discovered unwholesome island of St. Thomas, or St. Thomas, called, whatever that word is, the Isles of Perdition, which was colonized by the Portuguese condemned criminals to fare there as best they could. Those between 10 and 14 years old were sold as slaves. Then indeed the cup of their affliction was full to the brim. So showing that they basically were tortured and treated bad and when they were sent to this island of St. Thomas, or slaves or whatever. Then on the right it talks about thousands after enduring all they did, after leaving their beloved Spain and all their wealth and ease, submitted to baptism now in the hope of being reunited with their children. So after children were taken, the parents decided to convert, and they wanted to reunite with their children. It shows you that they had wealth as well, all their wealth and ease. So they left those things. But thousands were sold as slaves, yet prior to their being so, they were submitted to tortures, cruelties, outrages, too revolting, too repulsive, too heart-rending to be here narrated, talking about the torture they had to undergo. So a lot of people know about the Inquisition, showing you that they had to do a lot of torture there. Terror seized upon the native Portuguese Jews when they helplessly beheld the cruelties to which their Spanish brethren were subjected. So both the Portuguese Jews and the Spanish. So the Spanish first, and then now the Portuguese Jews, the black Portuguese Jews. So it says brethren, showing that they were of color. So one can't be black and the other one not if they were brethren. So but then if we look back at the King's Fountain picture that we showed before, Benet pointed this out as well, and talks about how this oil painting from 1570 through 1580, a Dutch man came there and he painted what he saw, and you see there in the top, you see some type of this man with this red bucket on his face and look like blood or fire coming out of him. So some kind of torture was being done to him, just like was talked about in the story. Down in the bottom left corner, you see this boy being brought out by these two white men. And if you notice, right behind the two white men, there's a black woman, looks like his mother. It's kind of like in amazement and awe. And you see behind her, you see this man with a bat. So it's hard to tell, but the boy that looks like he's being lifted, black young man there, actually has a bruise, a blood stain on his head, like he was hit in the head with a bat. And Benet also has some material about that, talks more in detail, where the book basically talks step by step of what's going on in this picture. And I don't think it has anything association to do with the picture. So showing you that there's a lot of the same evidence, basically showing you that this was what was happening during this time. And then there on the right, you see this man with a cross on his back on his horse, showing you that he probably was a convert, right? Because he got the cross showing that he converted. And it's crazy because, some people will say, and even some of the schools or teachers will tell you that this is the King of Portugal. But during this time, King of Portugal did not have a black king. You can go and look up the king, and it's definitely not the King of Portugal. So And the word Negro, if you think about the word Negro, it's basically in 1555, and Negro is actually not an English word. So we know that the British basically ruled America, and they converted to being took over the country, and they turned it to be America. But you can see where that is a Spanish or Portuguese word, Negro. So why were English-speaking people calling their slaves a Spanish word, Portuguese word? And if you look on the marker for the first Africans in Virginia, it says the first documented Africans in Virginia arrived here in August 1619 on the White Line, an English privateer based in the Netherlands. Colonel of colonial officials traded food for these 20 and odd Africans who had been captured from a Portuguese slave ship. So I showed this in one of my earlier videos, showing that they come from a Portuguese slave ship and they were invaded by the White Lion, an English privateer. So they started off on these Portuguese. So why are these on the Portuguese slave ships? Right. So that's showing you where they got their name. And also Benea talks about this with Yahya. And if you know, go to the Jewish Encyclopedia and search in the name Yahya or Negro, you get this man come up, and it says Portuguese family of the Middle Ages, member which they were prominent in Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Turkey. Certain individuals of the family bore the additional cognomen Negro, with reference to the Moors from whom several of the states had been obtained. So, showing you that the name Negro was given to this guy. And then you can see that his descendants share his name Yahya, and even took up the word Yahya Negro. And then on the right, you can see this president of Gambia. His name is Yahya as well. And at the top, you can see where it talks about how Yahya is similar to the name of the Levitical priest in the Bible. And in Persia, it says Yahya is a title of address for a senior village or community elder. But also in the Congo area, they call their elders Yahya as well. And I talked to somebody from Congo, and he confirmed it also. And if you look at the slave board database that was created by Emory University and some other schools and institutions, and you type in the name Yah there, you actually get Yahya in different variations and forms, in the exact same variation as we saw in the Jewish Encyclopedia. We also get the name Yah, and Yah, if you know about Hallelujah, we know that's the name of God, or name of Yah. And you know, that's important because if we think about the earlier story about how it talks about the bones was found in these slums or ghettos, we see the definition of the word ghetto is a quarter of a city in which the Jews were formerly required to live. And we know that the Holocaust actually called the ghettos where the poor Jews lived, but also before that, we can see that these ghettos are also associated with the Jews of Portugal and Spain. And if you look at the names here of blacks called ghetto names, you can see association of Latifah, Shaniqua, Latoya, LaQuisha, Lakeisha. So Keisha is also my sister's name. If you look it up, it's actually a Hebrew African name. So showing you there's an association with Africa and Hebrew there as well. So be proud of your name if you have one of those names. But then the Gullah people here in the most people know about the ones in the Savannah or the Charleston area, but the Gullah people actually came up with the song Kumbaya, right? So how did the Negroes, slaves, speak Hebrew? How do they know how to speak Hebrew? And actually, if you come anywhere from Jacksonville, North Carolina, all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida, you consider your ancestors came off the boat there, you're considered to be Gullah. So I think it says somewhere between 85% of the people, what they call African Americans, and are considered to be Gullah. And it's our oldest connection back to Africa. And you see the picture depicted there. But it's very important because they're actually taking a lot of this land and turning it into golf resorts and beach property, and we're losing our culture and our history. So if there's something you can do to actually help them to preserve this as a historical place, or anything in your power, please go there to help. But also, you see the Negro Land map, and that's in the Discovery House Museum that I actually went to when I went to visit. And it has a big map that says Negro Land there. And It was amazing that people there didn't really understand what that meant, or even seemed like they even acknowledged the map. But you see there the old cartoon not cartoon, the kids show Gullah Gullah Allen came on Nickelodeon. It's actually the Gullah people. And on the right, you can see Billy Simmons, and it says a noted scholar in Hebrew and Arabic. And he was basically a slave. He came off the boat speaking Arabic and Hebrew, showing another association back to us as being the Israelites. But even the word Gullah in itself, if you look it up, Gullah, it says Gulal, and it talks about how that definition is in the Bible. It's actually a Hebrew word. And so they're called a Hebrew word, and it means kindred, redemption, right of redemption, price of redemption, kindred, redemption. So showing you that there's association there. And they said they got their name Gullah from the Angola, where a lot of them came from. And the word Gola is actually a Hebrew word. Also means carried away, removing, exile. And you see a lot of the Jewish people talking about it, the people of the diaspora. So it's very interesting that Gola means those that have been removed. And then Gullah means those that have been redeemed. So very interesting there. And then in Savannah, you got the oldest African Baptist church, and there you have a church that has the gopher wood, kind of like was made out of art. There as the pulpits, the older pulpit that was made by the slaves that was free, or the slaves were still slaves during that time. And then they have veils on the windows, kind of like veils that was in the temple that they open and close. And then also they have this writing up there, and this writing is supposed to be in a more of a Shemitic writing of, people say maybe Arabic and Hebrew mix, which is very similar to what I know about Swahili, which is a Semitic language that had both of those mixed as well. So here at the end, we have the 400 years of slavery for African Americans. A lot of people don't understand what the 400 years mean, but it's very popular since last year, with especially here with what's his name, George Floyd. There are a lot of people talking about 400 years, but a lot of people didn't know that last year in 2019, there was an act of Congress for a commencement for the HR 1242 and the 400 years of slavery to be an act of Congress, an act for people to celebrate it. And a lot of people didn't know about it, even though they had money and stuff for it. But it actually was basically showing people that it was 400 years of slavery. And then you see the year of return was that year 2, as which actually people in Ghana wanted people to come there and to move back, or to at least visit and become back united with them. And Steve Harvey and Ludacris and I think Roland Martin and other people went there to visit. And you see the New York Times had the 1619 project as well, identifying that year. And it's so important because if you know, as in the sign said, marker about the first Africans being brought to the U.S., you'll see that it started around the summer of 1619. And if you look what happened around the summer of 2019, you'll see that the coronavirus started. So there's a prophecy that talks about 400 years that something will happen, judgment will happen. And after the judgment is completed, then you'll come out with great wealth, because he's going to judge those nations that his people actually were moved to live in. So it's very interesting to see that that was right on time compared to prophecy in the 400 years. But this is the end of how we know we are the Israelites outside the Bible, and this is the shorter version. So you don't have to worry about super 2, 3, 4 hours videos. You get it right now in about a good 50-minute video. Alright, so hopefully this is helpful. Please continue to like if you want me to continue to talk more about our history here in America, and how I know that we are the Israelites.